Welcome to pattern making class. This is Annette Julie, and we're working on our contoured waistband. So I needed some more paper, so we rolled some out off my roll. And now I'm going to go ahead and trim some paper. And we need a piece that is going to be able to allow this waistband to be put on the fold in the back, and it curves. So let's make sure that this is big enough. That's the fold. Yeah, that's going to be fine. We can allow some room for an extension as well. So go ahead and grab yourself some pattern making paper. Okay, good. So I'm going to add my grain line right in the center back of this piece of paper before I place down my waistband. I have to put my waistband on the fold. I do not need a center back seam on the waistband, nor do I need a side seam on the waistband. Let's go ahead and crease lightly with your grain line. And now crease from the middle out and the middle out. Now we're ready to go ahead and copy off our waistband. But I want to make sure that when you are working with this, that you have spent some time fitting this. You can add additional contour points to this waistband. We closed the side seam, but whenever my students try this on a dress form or a person, they end up wanting to go ahead and nip this in a little bit more. So what it would look like to contour this a bit more would be to go out about 1/4 of an inch on both sides. You don't have to draw this line, you can actually fold it, but I want to show you so you can visualize how you would take that in more. There's an option for contouring on our side seam, right? So I could go ahead and cut or fold. And so now the pattern's getting a little bit bulky. I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to place it there, and fold it. Let's go ahead and bring that in more. That's a really nice place to contour, is on that side seam. Okay, now an additional place to contour, and this is when you put it on the body or the dress form and see if it's gapping. Another place to contour is that center back. Take that in about 1/4 of an inch to 0. This is another spot that I commonly contour. And I'm going to fold and make a new center back. These are all fitting options depending on what your figure looks like. You could make the pattern double like I'm going to do now and then fit it. Okay, so we're ready to go ahead and trace this off. We're going to add some nice curves to it in a minute. I'm going to get that little piece of tape off the edge so I'm not copying on top of that. Now I have my grain line on my piece of paper, and I'm going to place my new center back there. Move this down to the bottom edge. Allow myself some room for seam allowance. And that's just an option to contour at those 2 spots. You might not want to contour it all. You might want to leave it with a more relaxed fit at the top edge. Go ahead and weight your pattern down. And you see in most of my videos I pattern make with pen, but we're going to go ahead and pattern make with some pencil, because I know we're going to have to develop this line on both sides. This is the top edge. that'll be sewn to itself. Okay. The bottom edge will be sewn, to the leg of the pant. Trace that off. It has points now wherever the dart is. So, or was. There's my little notches. And I know we have a little bit more to trace off in the front, but let's see, did I trace all the back here? It's always good to look underneath before you pull your pattern up and then discover that you have more tracing to do. Go ahead and trace off at the center front. The waistband does not have an extension at the moment, nor has it been trued. It's been slightly contoured. Contoured means to make it fit close to the body. This is looking really good, except we need to put the notch here for the front. And now I feel like we are ready to take this up. Good. Let's start the truing process. Truing, giving us the most accurate representation of that line. There's my new side seam. Here's my notches. Let me bring them in. And another notch. Don't want to lose these. And my center front. And I don't want to cut any of the inside of the circle away, but I don't need all of this paper right now, so let me get rid of that. And let me grab my ruler, my curve ruler, and let's start on the top edge by truing this with a straight right angle at center front and allowing the waistband to curve. I'm going to dip down a little bit below the line that I have to enhance the curve. I didn't like it up that high. And then we'll make sure down here that we are even, and we'll add that and measure. Let's continue on with our line. Let's make this continuous from front to back. Nice curve. And here now, when we get to the center back, it's actually making a point. So we have to make sure that we end this with a right angle at the center back to eliminate any point, because we contoured, it made a point. That looks good. So you can see here I've changed it a little bit. I brought this up, I brought this down, I brought that down. Now we need to check our 2 inches again and correct it. So let's take your 2 by 18 inch ruler, and from the top edge that you have confirmed and smoothed out and trued, you're going to go down 2 inches, and we're going to correct the bottom line. Rotating around, here's our side seam, which will line up with our pant leg. But we don't have a side seam anymore on our waistband. Going towards center front. Now we can add on our 1/2 inch seam allowance. And on the bottom edge, you're going to use a 1/2 inch. And on the top edge, I'd like you to use a quarter because it's a tight circle and it functions like a facing. Using 1/4 of an inch on the top edge. Now we have all our seam allowance on there. We know this is our center front, our side seam, and our center back. We can add extensions on the front. So if you watched one of my prior videos and you've made some pattern pieces with me, you perhaps already have a fly shield. And my fly shield is 1.5 inches. Yours could be 1 inch, 1.25 inches, 2 inches, etc. So I'm going to make one of my sides at least that 1.5 inches. Okay, so let me go ahead and add that on. Bring that out, forming right angles on top and bottom. Continuing our 1/4 inch seam allowance. Down at the bottom, continuing the 1/2 inch. So that center front, this is an extension. We're going to have a 1/2 inch excuse me, on this end as well. We'll add a notch here, top and bottom. Here's our notches. We can blend everything together with our curve ruler. Makes for cutting a little bit easier, but if you're ever rushed for time, you can cut and smooth at the same time if you trust your fingers and your scissors. Right now we're truing the outside edge, which is our seam allowance. You can see we have to flip the ruler to get the shape. We're not trying to re-correct the shape. We're trying to keep the shape at this point. We're just connecting the dotted lines into a solid line. Let's go ahead and cut this out. First, the outside edge. Looks great. Now we're going to cut the inside edge. Please do it in that order. And we're also cutting from the center front to the center back. Now when that corner gets tight, you can flip it, come back the opposite direction. And if your extension, your underlapping extension that matches your fly shield, if that's the same as your overlapping extension, you can cut these matching. So we can see how our waistband now turns into a circle. Let's go ahead and draw the seam allowance here at the other end so you understand it. We have our 1/2 of an inch. We've got our 1/2 inch down here at the bottom. And we have our 1/4 inch up here at the top. And we also have our center front that's back 1.5 inches. So if we line these up center front to center front, this goes right over left, we would have a tab that would extend on the top of our pants for this side. And for the side that is underneath, this piece would match our fly shield. Okay, just like that. So if you don't want a piece of a waistband that extends the center front, you can keep that right side at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then that would match center front. So you have two options there. Take your notcher, weight your pattern together so the top and bottom line up. Grab your notcher. Let's make your notches. This is going to line up with our side seam on our pant. And this is going to line up with our back leg. And if your notcher doesn't totally work on soft paper because it's meant for hard paper or multiple layers, go ahead and cut it out. Or if you don't even have a notcher, just use your scissors. Let's go ahead and notch up here on the top. Okay. Let's go ahead and draw a grain line parallel with my center back. And this is our dropped and contoured waistband. I've made this as a